Hey Optimancers, Chris here. The Tal'Dorei campaign setting Reborn from Critical Role is now available on D&D Beyond. So I'm doing a series of videos covering the subclasses and feats in that supplement. The Monk subclass has been looming, but here we are, and we're looking at the Way of the Cobalt Soul. So the Monk chassis is weak, and of course there's the issue of everything using the same resource. So when I look at a Monk subclass, I am primarily looking for two things. First, the subclass should have features that are potent. Ideally, a bit more potent than subclasses for other classes. And second, they ideally shouldn't drain yet more ki. So either have their own resource pool or not use a resource at all. Or in worst case, they do use ki, but not much. So let's see how the Way of Cobalt Soul measures up. There's just one feature at level 3, Extract Aspects. So this is one of those Monk subclass features that's tied to Flurry of Blows. We see this in some other 3rd level Monk subclass features like the Open Hand Technique for Open Hand Monks, the Drunken Technique for Drunken Master Monks, and Hand of Healing for Way of Mercy Monks. And so what that design does is it gives the feature limited use because technically it is tied to ki, but it's not using extra ki over just using Flurry of Blows. And in the case of Extract Aspects, when you hit a creature with one of your unarmed attacks granted by Flurry of Blows, you can analyze it, learning any damage vulnerabilities, resistances, and immunities, including condition immunities. In addition, whenever that creature misses you with an attack afterwards, you can use your reaction to make an unarmed strike against that creature as long as it's within your reach, and you can continue to do so until you complete a short or long rest, or more likely until you've killed the creature. So, learning damage resistances and immunities and whatnot can be useful. It depends what you're fighting, but if you have questions on what those things are, this could be helpful. Then, after you hit it with Flurry of Blows, first, it needs to survive until its next turn at least, and secondly, it needs to target you with its attacks, and then thirdly, it needs to actually miss. And if so, you get a reaction attack. And I kind of doubt this is going to be very many reaction attacks, and in a lot of cases, no reaction attacks. But on occasion, you'll probably get a couple. So overall, this isn't bad. It's not amazing, but it's probably better than most Monk subclasses at level 3. Then at level 6, Extort Truth. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 1 ki point, and it must succeed on a charisma saving throw, or it can't speak a deliberate lie for 10 minutes, and all charisma checks directed at the creature have advantage during that time. And you know if the creature succeeded at the saving throw or not. Now the creature knows what's going on, so they can just not answer your questions, or speak at all, or be evasive in their answers well under this effect. And then at the end it says if we don't want to strike them, we can just touch them, spend the ki, and impose the same effect. So if you're wondering why on earth a feature would give you advantage on charisma checks against a creature that you just hit with an unarmed strike, I think to me it's pretty clear that the idea is this feature is supposed to be used in interrogation, like it's using torture, and then you get advantage on the charisma checks, probably intimidation, to get them to talk. And then at the end, if you're a character that doesn't want to use torture, well, you can still use this without hitting them. And this is pretty bad. So obviously this isn't something you would use in combat or even outside of combat most of the time. It's only of any use in that one specific instance, interrogation. And that's really, really narrow. And even then it's not great. It uses ki, it provides a saving throw, they don't have to answer your questions, and you get advantage on charisma checks. And of course, for our character, that's no good, but it might be okay for, the party bard or paladin. But did they really need the advantage? Couldn't they just help each other and get advantage? I don't know that this is providing all that much more than, say, a Zone of Truth spell. So, super narrow purpose, uses ki, provides a saving throw, and, if this was the kind of thing that you really wanted to have, the paladin could have just memorized Zone of Truth, and it would basically do the same thing. So I guess you save them a preparation slot and a spell slot, and that's really about it. Not good. Now, when I saw that there were two 6th level features, I assumed that Extort Truth is maybe supposed to be the ribbon, and the other one is like the big feature. But the second 6th level feature, Mystical Erudition, is clearly the ribbon. You're getting 1 skill proficiency, and it's in a skill based on an ability score that you very likely dumped. You can get Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, or Religion. And if you're already proficient, you get Expertise. And you get another one at level 11, another one at level 17. Skill proficiencies, even Expertise, these are ribbon features, especially when they're based on ability scores that you dumped. So this is the ribbon feature. It's not a terrible ribbon. In fact, it might just be as good as Extort Truth, but I think the intention of the design is that this is the ribbon and Extort Truth is the big feature. But even together, there's just not much here at level 6. And then at level 11, Mind of Mercury. Once per turn, if you've already taken a reaction, you can spend 1 key point to take an additional reaction. You can only use 1 reaction per triggering effect. So what that last part means is that any reaction needs a trigger. So for a Cobalt Soul Monk, that could be deflecting missiles if you're hit with a ranged attack, or slow fall if you're taking falling damage. The reaction attack granted by Extract Aspects if an analyzed creature misses you with an attack, or we've readied our action for something, or someone provokes an opportunity attack. And I think that's pretty much it. Now, if Monk's got something like Counterspell, this would be pretty amazing. Or the Artificer's Flash of Genius, or the Beast Barbarian's Tail Defense, that'd be great. Or Cutting Words. This could be pretty amazing. For us, so if we get hit with more than 1 missile, we could deflect 1 more. Or if our analyzed creature misses us twice on their turn. I mean, probably not, right? Because we're a monk, and we have monk armor class. But if they do, 1 more unarmed strike. And it costs you key. Or potentially we might be able to do something with multiclassing here, but we've already invested 11 levels in Monk, so multiclass uses for this would come very, very late. So this isn't terrible, but honestly, this is an 11th level feature, and this is a Monk. And I think they could have just said the Cobalt Soul can take 2 reactions between their turns. Monk reactions are tame enough that I don't think that would have been an issue at all, and I don't think this should have to require a key. But this one isn't awful. It's okay. Finally, at 17th level, Debilitating Barrage. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 3 key points to impose vulnerability to a damage type of your choice for a minute or until the end of a turn for which it's taken that damage. If it is already resistant to that damage type, the resistance is suppressed for 1 minute instead of them becoming vulnerable. But if it's immune, this feature doesn't work. Once a creature is affected by this, they cannot be affected again for 24 hours. Now, this is their capstone. 3 key, 1 damage type, 1 turn, 1 step towards vulnerability, and doesn't remove immunity. Now, this isn't useless, but you'll need to coordinate. And if you do, then you can make some use of this. But this is definitely not a banger to finish off this subclass. I would have liked to have seen this been 1 key point, or all 3 but have it just straight out last the full minute. And speaking of having it last the full out minute, it says here, if a creature has resistance to the damage type you choose, this resistance is suppressed for 1 minute rather than gaining vulnerability. I assume the intent is that it works the same, so it lasts a minute or until the end of a turn in which it's taken the damage of that type, but that's not what it says. It says it's suppressed for 1 minute rather than vulnerability, potentially including, the clause about the damage of that type. So I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. I assume it was supposed to work the same as the vulnerability, but the way it's written, I would lean more towards it just flat out lasting the minute. So probably some of you should check with your DM. And if I was a DM, I'd let them have it for the minute. I mean, they're a monk. Give them every opportunity to get every benefit they can get. But assuming we're giving them the vulnerability and we want to get the most out of this, well, then I would be looking at something like maybe making the vulnerability to radiant damage to set up the paladin with their smites on their turn, or the rogue or crossbow expert sharpshooter by making the creature vulnerable to piercing damage. In order for this to be worth 3 key, it needs to be someone who delivers a whole lot of 1 damage type in 1 turn. And that's not you, by the way. Making the creature vulnerable to bludgeoning for your turn probably is not worth 3 key points. You do monk damage, double that, and you get 1 turn of decent damage for 3 key points. And you're probably using Flurry of Blows, so 4 key points. And it occurs to me there's actually a second part about this sentence that's unclear. So let's just say theoretically, I'm playing my monk and I'm not too smart. So I decide that I'm going to use this feature the first time I hit a creature with an unarmed strike and give it vulnerability to bludgeoning damage. Except that this creature has resistance to bludgeoning damage from non-magical attacks. So how does this part work when that happens? Do they just lose that resistance? Because if they do, then this does nothing for us because our attacks were already considered magical. So we just threw that 3 key points in the trash. Now, the way I would probably run this as a DM, and the way I think makes the most sense, is if a creature did have resistance to bludgeoning from non-magical attacks, I would have them lose that resistance, and then I'd have them gain vulnerability to bludgeoning attacks from magical attacks. That's how I'd probably handle it, and then the monk would benefit from this feature in that case, and I think that makes the most sense, but it should really say that. Either way, this isn't useless, but it's not strong. And 3rd level is probably the best feature here for the level. It's pretty solid. Then the level 11 feature, which isn't bad. Then level 17, which is on the weaker side. And then level 6, which I think is just weak. On the upside, this is far from the worst monk subclass. In fact, it's probably even in the top half. I'd probably place it right here on E tier, behind the Shadow Monk and ahead of the Kensai. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend playing this subclass. That 6th level feature really doesn't fill the gap from level 3 through level 11. And every single feature here is tied to key. One just piggybacks on another key using feature, but the other 3 all requiring independent key expenditure, and it's going to be difficult to afford all that. But from a weak chassis to a strong one, in my next video we're going to look at the Oath of the Open Sea Paladin. Hope you'll join me. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.